studying the work of colleagues in especially Denmark and Norway, until very recently not at all in Ireland, it seems to me that what I'm trying to achieve develops through the operationalization of those three principles that I label learner involvement, learner reflection, and target language use. In order to achieve what I'm talking about, which is drawing learners and their agency and their motivation and their sense of identity into the business of learning in order that they go out again with bits of another language embedded in that sense of agency and identity and whatnot, we have to engage them in what they're doing. We have to make the process of setting a learning agenda something in which they have a fully responsible share. This isn't just a matter of giving them a choice, do this or do that. It's a matter of negotiating with them, first of all, what the choices might be. Now, that already presupposes that we're going to get them to think about what they're doing. But there are processes of reflection that go beyond just thinking about what we're doing, thinking about the content of what we're learning, the language, thinking about the learning process. So that's learner reflection. But neither of those things is much good unless it's embedded in a remorseless attempt to get the target language out of the learners. If there is a single factor that determines whether language teaching works or not, it is whether or not the target language is the dominant mode of classroom discourse and the output focus for all activities. It really is as simple as that. The two-headed arrows are worth briefly commenting on because what I mean by them is that these three principles, in what I've said to explain them, they're clearly fairly well interconnected. I don't see them as a hierarchy. I see them as three interacting perspectives on a complex phenomenon. And if you have the kind of understanding of learning and therefore teaching that underlies my notions, then each of these principles can be elaborated in such a way as to generate the other two. And that's the point of the two-headed arrows. It seems to me that language learner autonomy is constructed and enacted in classroom discourse that's authentically dialogic. So unremitting use of the target language ensures that language acquisition takes place, but unremitting concern for learner involvement and learner reflection ensures that learners' second language repertoire is itself dialogically constituted, developing the internal metacognitive function in interaction with the external communicative function. I've, in much of my writing, referred to various Vygotskian notions of interaction and so on and so forth, internalization of higher cognitive functions and all that stuff that I'm sure you're familiar with. I'm always disappointed when I read work that comes out of the so-called sociocultural movement in second language acquisition that touts the idea of reflection, that when you look at the data they present, always in English. So it's learners reflecting in English about their attempts to use French. You have to, in my view, also in my experience, you have to go after the metacognitive function from the beginning, along with the communicative function. They've got to be developed in interaction with one another. Obviously, you start in a very simple way, but if you don't start in a very simple way, you can't move on to more advanced things. When I'm talking about this, of course, I'm not talking about a method, but a conceptual framework. And we have to devise contextually appropriate methods out of this general frame of thought. And I would summarize that frame of thought with that diagram. The whole thing is embedded in target language use, which is pushing into learner involvement at the top and learner reflection at the bottom, though they could be the other way. But those two things, because they're engaged in target language use, are pushing this metacognitive function out into the communicative function.